that. But I do think new tech is cool and has a lot of potential to be things that could improve people's lives. Uh, Matthew Farrell, he's a YouTuber. He talks about tech.
I talk about heat pumps
He's fairly
a lot.
big.
They really are the most energy efficient way to heat and cool things, but they're not the only way. There's another form of cooling that's been getting a lot of attention in recent years that might just lie in these bendy little wires. It might seem a little abstract at first, but the study of caloric cooling represents the potential for a new solid-state
Yeah, he talks about
approach to
renewables
managing
and
heat.
all
Yes,
kinds of
I
like
said
technology
solid-state.
innovations.
That comes with the possibility of achieving significantly higher efficiencies without refrigerants.
Yeah, do you understand how cool this is? Do you understand how cool it is that they're making technological breakthroughs that would allow cooling without refrigerants? With like fucking solid state cooling technology? Do you understand how cool and game changing that is? If we were able to adopt that for like widespread mass use, that would be so cool. Like, it doesn't solve all of the problem, obviously, but like, that's just that's basically magic to me. Like, yeah, honestly, sci-fi shit. But let's learn more together. I think it's cool.
Caloric cooling holds massive implications for the way we cool our homes, our vehicles, and maybe even ourselves. So what does this metal have in store for us? How does it work? And why does it have the potential to completely change climate control? I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by Factor. If you're a regular viewer on my channel, you already know that I hammer on the fact that there isn't a single technological savior that's coming to liberate us all. There's more than one way to overcome the obstacles that are facing us as we progress through this clean energy transition. And here's a new fascinating contender. Now, what I have here are wires made out of nitinol, a nickel titanium alloy or metal mixture. It's also a type of shape memory alloy. Basically, you can remember its shape better than I can remember where I put my car keys. Now that means it has a really interesting property, the ability to do this. Now, I'm not just showing off nitinol's quirks for fun, and
that's so cool. Like, let's just watch that again, because this kind of blew my mind. Like, you can bend it up into coils, heat it up,
do this,
and then it straightens out.
I'm not just showing off nitinol's quirks for fun, and
that's
yes,
so cool.
It is very fun. Its unique abilities may one day be the backbone, or perhaps the wireframe, for refrigeration and air conditioning systems that are cleaner and more efficient. So welcome to the world of elastocalorics. You may be wondering, elasto what now? And what does this wire have anything to do with the future of cooling? Well, chances are that you're familiar with the capital C calorie associated with nutrition labels. That's an offshoot of calorie with a lowercase c, the unit that, in the simplest sense, measures heat energy. In other words, heat is the main course on this menu. And with elastocaloric cooling, we're looking at a new way of serving up colder air without relying on refrigerants. Now, this spectrum of solid-state technologies might just become the new and improved way of getting your house...
Oh, are we learning about battery technology again? Effeminate, gay, and lame. Obviously, we must abandon this for explosion machines.
...for your car or your leftovers to chill out. So how? Well, with the power of what a member of my scientific advisory board called the energy conversions of the future. Now, we're already constantly converting energy in our daily lives, and not just by flicking light switches on and flipping laptops open. Your body turns the chemical energy that you get out of your meat and potatoes into the mechanical energy that gets you through the day. The meat and potatoes of this channel, renewables like wind and solar, are more advanced conversions. Wind's kinetic and mechanical energy, and solar's light and heat.
To be clear, explosion machines are really cool. And they will always be really cool, but maybe they're not so cool that they're worth killing the planet over. That's my obscene position.
Heat are transformed into electricity. As our demand for energy grows, the race is on to find more direct, more efficient, and more safe ways of obtaining it. That means getting creative. And before we dive deeper into elastocalorics, it helps to understand how traditional cooling systems
I'm so glad
operate.
I'm so glad I showed you guys that video about the Baker Electric the other day and how angry it made me. I'm glad I was able to convey that to you guys, because honestly, we should be deeply dissatisfied with the fact that like this is currently where a lot of our technology is, instead of like 100 years more advanced.
estimated 5 billion cooling units
Hey,
globally.
Snoogan.
That includes refrigerators, air conditioners, and heat pumps.
The sound
Most
seems low.
function through vapor compression cycles. Now here's a quick breakdown. Imagine that you're plugging in your
It's
fridge
about
for the
as good
first
as I
time.
can go.
Its mission is now to get rid of all that hot air inside of it. Now, the refrigerant, often a hydrofluorocarbon or HFC, travels through 4 main components: a compressor, a condenser, an expander, and an evaporator. Now, step 1, the compressor increases the temperature and pressure of the refrigerant vapor. Step 2, the condenser changes the refrigerant from a gas to a liquid, which releases a lot of heat into the environment. Now, step 3, the expander depressurizes the refrigerant. As it expands, it chills, making it colder than the interior of the fridge. Step 4, the evaporator absorbs heat from inside the fridge, vaporizing the refrigerant, and the cycle starts over with the compressor capturing this warm vapor.
Hey, low clarity.
Although the stars of the show are called refrigerants, this system works in a similar way for air conditioning too. This whole process relies on phase changes in refrigerant properties.
Yeah, this is one of the main ways cooling is achieved globally. Like with basically all cooling technology. There are exceptions, obviously, but like this is the main thing. You got the refrigerants traveling through the tubes, and it's not particularly efficient, mechanically. So the refrigerants can damage the environment. The energy consumption definitely damages the environment. The possibility that we are maybe going to get something that does neither of those two things, that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat.
To transfer the heat. But what if we could avoid refrigerants altogether? So how does this relate to elastocalorics? Well, as it turns out, most alloys have more than one solid phase, which might sound surprising. We usually think of phases as solids, liquids, or gases, but there can be different solid phases too. A good example is carbon. When it forms a honeycomb structure, it becomes graphite, the soft stuff that you have in pencils. But if it's arranged in a tetrahedral structure, you get diamond, one of the hardest materials on Earth. Now in metal alloys, especially nitinol, 2 common but harder to picture phases are austenite and martensite. And just like how water absorbs and releases heat when it changes from ice to liquid, these metals do something similar when they switch between austenite and martensite. It's kind of like how refrigerants work in the vapor compression cycle that we use all the time. Now, I don't want to compress too much information at once, but how do we practically replace the gas and liquid in our cooling systems with solid wires of fancy metal? And speaking about cooling things like refrigerators, it's making me think about food. And it seems like now's a good time to take a quick snack break with today's.
Yo, Polly has his cracker.
Hello all, I have not come for politics, but have come for the woo-woo-woo. Oh, O-W-H-H-A-A-A-W-H-A-A-A.
Hell
BWO.
yeah, BWA. Polly has his cracker, and also Shimps Together Strong. Let's go. Getting us one step closer to Dream Daddy, too. Thank you so much.
Today's sponsor, Factor.
Oh.
Now my schedule is solid wires on our cooling systems. Obviously, we're not going to be running metal through compressors and cooling coils, but caloric cooling cycles can actually be broken down into 4 steps, just like the vapor compression cycles. It all starts with the material that you're using. For elastocalorics, that could be something like natural rubber, nitinol, or other types of shape memory alloys. Next, you apply force to the material, which stresses.
Why are men scared of pretty stuff? Well, because they've been, raised to believe that pretty stuff is effeminate. Femininity in a man equals gay. And they've been told that that is extraordinarily bad and unacceptable by, their patriarchal upbringing. They've been taught a toxic idea of what it means to be a man, and that in turn affects all of society because, well, they're directed to make their internal problems a lot of other people's problems instead. So, Sophie Bliss, thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Let me add that up on the list. We're at 29 subs, folks. Let's go. And honestly, like the idea that it's like, patriarchy is like a shorthand, but it's really just the idea that, the previous generation that has raised up the current one taught them what it means to be a man, and what it means to be a man involves, certain ideas of hierarchy of different groups in society, with men being at the top. Men or the idea that like men are good at X, Y, and Z, and women are good at, A, B, and C, but A, B, and C are, less valued by society commercially, culturally, etc. So like it winds up still being, despite them being taught that that's, oh well, we're just equal, we're just good at different things, it still creates that hierarchy. Some young conservative men are apparently scared of washing their ass because gay. Well, yeah, a lot of adult men are scared of washing their hands because gay. Like, there was a whole movement in the early 2000s around metrosexuality, which was basically just straight men who predominantly lived in cities that, bathed and dressed well and had a certain idea of cleanliness. Like, that was what a metrosexual was, and it was too close to being gay for, public comfort. I was called gay as a kid because I didn't care about sports or cars. Yeah. It is being seen as effeminate or girly, is a sign of weakness. Like, you throw like a girl, or it's seen as being subservient in a way to other men.
Is it? That mechanical energy turns into...
Yo, Story of the Bard. I keep starting the video
To
up
shimp
again.
or not to shimp, that is the question, whether it is noble to suffer the slings and shimps. Okay, hello chat BWA.
To shimp or not to shimp? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer the slings and shimps of ignoble fortune. Glitter Bell, thank you so much for the raid, by the way. Thank you. Welcome, folks. You gotta say it. You gotta say it while crying. Look, you gotta say it while you are very specifically, what's his butt? Not Ethan Hawke. That hack. Kenneth Branagh. You have to say it while sobbing and being Kenneth Branagh. That's the only acceptable way of delivering Shakespeare. Yo, Paladin!
Grigor here. I hear you are
Grigor.
playing my simulation, for I am the Dream Daddy. I support all of Jack's high-level ideas.
High-level ideas? Paladin lost! Grigor, niet Russian! Thank you so much for your no-strings-attached patronage with the 12 gifted subs. I appreciate that. My god, guys! We are only, what was that, 44? I think we're only 6 subs away, or was it, is that, no, 43, right? Sorry, I'm bad at math. And I totally brain farted what the digit was. I'm sorry. I think it's 43, though. Grigor Niet, 44 out of 50 is correct? Okay. Far be it from me to steal that sub from you guys. Wouldn't it be funny if Jack spoke fluent Russian? Niet. No. Okay, cool. I'm glad my initial math was correct. God, that Star Trek short from the other day really fucked up my heart. Bawling. God damn. Hey, London Cheesehead. Okay, let's learn about solid state cooling, because this is some of the coolest technology that I've ever seen.
To internal energy, making the material change shape and heat up. The heat that's generated then flows out of the system, similar to how heat is released in the condensing stage of a vapor compression cycle. That's a high-level explanation of elastocalorics, so let's get down to the wire. Nitinol is super elastic. This means that it can not only shapeshift visually, but structurally.
Look at that!
This phase transformation is completely reversible. It's sort of like an untaped cardboard box.
Look at how cool that is!
But deforms into a parallelogram if you put a little force on it, and then snaps back to place once you remove that force. You can use those same shapes to visualize how nitinol moves between states, but this magic metal goes a step further. Like a student during an exam, nitinol turns into something different under stress. When stressed, it changes phases from martensite to austenite, which causes it to heat up slightly. But when the stress is removed, the material switches back to martensite, and this phase change cools it down. As the stress is released, the wire chills out, pulling heat from its surroundings. And what's interesting about nitinol is something called thermal hysteresis. That's a fancy way of saying that the temperature at which it heats up under stress is different from the temperature at which it cools down when the stress is released. For example, in high-efficiency nitinol, adding stress at 22 degrees Celsius can heat it up to around 49 degrees Celsius. But removing the stress drops the temperature all the way down to 5 degrees Celsius, about 17 degrees cooler than the start.
That's so
And that's
cool.
just one wire on a lab table. So we can imagine that with enough wires and the proper design, the wires can remove heat from a space, cooling it off. To be refrigerant clear, like with other solid-state tech, solid-state doesn't mean that there's no liquid or moving parts in this context. While caloric cooling doesn't require refrigerants, you obviously can't pump a solid material through a system. You still need a mechanical input, like the linear actuator, to get things moving. So depending on the design, a caloric cooling system might still need a heat transfer fluid to deliver that freshly cooled air where it needs to go. In fact, some elastocaloric prototypes do use fluids. It's confusing, I know. So let's talk more about those prototypes. If you're like me when I first heard about all of this, I wondered how much progress there's been on trying to make this a reality. It's still a fairly new idea.
Surely this breaks the first law of thermodynamics. I mean, my understanding is that like it doesn't, because what we're talking about is like he was trying to make the example there with like graphene just being like a different like kind of anatomical structure. The reason we're getting these kinds of outputs, at least in the short term, is because of the shifting of that anatomical structure between different states due to the unique properties of material like that, of like nitinol.
Yeah, but the interest is growing fast. Within the past decade or so, the field has jumped in popularity, with more and more publications and prototypes that are emerging. In this bar chart from a 2023 paper, you can clearly see the spike in interest. According to a 2024 review, interest in elastocalorics shot up by 160% between 2017 and 2022. But what's making it such a big deal all of a sudden? Well, elastocalorics are part of a broader group called caloric cooling, where things like electrical, magnetic, and mechanical fields trigger materials to absorb and release heat. Take electrocaloric or magnetocaloric materials, for example. They use special electromagnetic properties to generate or absorb heat under certain fields, which sounds super futuristic, right?
That sounds so
There's
cool.
a catch. They're really tough to control, measure, and actually put to use. Now, elastocalorics work differently. They rely on something much simpler: uniaxial stress, basically pulling or pushing along one axis. And here's the kicker: elastocalorics perform better than other types of solid-state cooling. They have stronger cooling effects, can save more energy, and can be used in a wider range of applications. As the International Institute of Refrigeration said in 2022, the elastocaloric effect in commercial-grade materials is already outperforming the best electrocaloric and magnetocaloric materials. Plus, shape memory alloys, which elastocalorics are made from, already have an existing market, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel with brand new materials. As of 2022, over 20 elastocaloric prototypes hit the scene.
Thank you for gifting a
And
membership
you've
over on
actually
YouTube.
seen some of them in action already. Remember my weird little wires? Well, elastocaloric's hottest shape memory alloy is nitinol at the moment. And that's partly because nitinol isn't just super elastic, it's super accessible. I bought mine on Amazon, and it was commercialized for a multitude of medical applications as early as the 1980s. Now, the last few years have seen multiple nitinol-based prototypes, but
guys, it's not bunk. People have built working prototypes. Like this is an established technology. This is not like the only issue, as far as I know, is about scaling it up and making it like more efficient. You know, this is not like, oh man, this is all just in theory. No, they actually have things that work. They've put that into like practice.
it is important to note that they've started small, like literally. In a 2022 paper, researchers from Xiaotong University and the Chinese Academy of Sciences describe a fully integrated elastocaloric refrigerator. It successfully demonstrates the possibility of designing these devices compactly enough for commercialization. But when the authors say compact,
I should show mechanical
they're not
batteries.
kidding.
Mechanical batteries
the
are
prototype
so
has a
cool.
cooling power of 3.1 watts,
You have
which
a
is
good
enough to
video
cover
on
its
one,
0.9
Ninja?
liter compartment. Later that same year, a research team from Saarland University in Germany debuted an elastocaloric demonstrator system characterized by artificial muscles composed of nitinol wire bundles. By 2023, engineering professors at the University of Maryland had developed a device capable of producing 200 watts of cooling capacity, which is enough for certain types of mini fridges, like a wine cooler. As of 2024, researchers at Saarland had built another prototype, a refrigerator with a sufficient capacity for one small bottle.
That's still really cool,
I'm
though.
sure you're noticing a pattern here. The prototypes we're seeing for elastocaloric systems are still fairly small. But hey, big things have small beginnings. And don't get me wrong, small-scale applications are pretty much what you'd expect from a lab setting. And yes, there are still some hurdles to overcome. For one, the amount of heat elastocalorics can remove is pretty small, which means that you need a lot of wires and cycles to get the job done. Now, these systems are literally hundreds of years behind the vapor compression HVAC systems that we use today, so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to optimize them. But there's a huge potential performance-wise. In heating and cooling tech, you often rate the system efficiency with a coefficient of performance, or COP. A heat pump system or refrigerator might have a COP of 3, which means for every unit of electricity that you put into the system, you get 3 units of heat energy back out. It's why they're over 100% efficient, which seems like a physics exploit. Now, I had a chance to speak with Dr. Ichiro Takeuchi from the University of Maryland about their work. He told me that just the material's equivalent efficiency of elastocalorics is around a COP of 20. But you can't directly compare that because it's not a full system. Each component in the system for the final product will eat into that COP performance, which is why he said a final system will most likely be closer to the efficiency of a vapor compression system at the end of the day.
This process is extremely energy efficient. So there's a good chance that if everything is put together, could be competitive in terms of overall efficiency compared to the existing vapor compression technology.
Which is really exciting because you can get that efficiency, you can get at least comparable efficiency, if not better, and you don't use like the refrigerants that are pretty bad for the environment.
When you buy a refrigerator or air conditioner and you talk about COP, that's a system's final product COP. So we are yet to be at a point where we could do one-to-one comparison.
Right.
It's difficult to, we're beginning to be able to do that finally, because after 10, 15 years, we're able to, make something that actually resembles a gadget. We have a big machine in our lab.
Yeah, first computer was
has
huge.
enough capacity to be a small scale refrigerator. So now we're beginning to be able to plug it into the wall and then do a one-to-one comparison with vapor compression.
If you'd like to see the full interview with Dr. Takeuchi, where we go in depth into how it works and how efficient these things are right now, be sure to listen or watch.
By the way, I do endorse Matt Farrell. I think he's maybe a bit overly rosy about future prospects and technology, but other than that, I think he does really good tech coverage.
Watch my follow-up
So
podcast.
definitely
still to be
worth-
determined.
definitely
you can find
worth
it
looking
everywhere
into
you get
here.
podcasts like Apple and Spotify, but also here on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. Another issue is stress fatigue. The more stress on the wires, the fewer cycles they last. But if you lower the stress, there's less cooling. Researchers are working on new alloys and techniques to improve how well the materials convert mechanical energy into heat. Then there's the challenge of applying stress without using tons of electricity. Actuators need to be efficient and compact because nobody wants a fridge that's mostly coils and little space for food. So elastocaloric systems have to be practical in design and footprint. Compared to other alternatives, elastocalorics have a lower technology readiness level, or TRL. And TRL measures how close a new tech is to being ready for the market.
Oh yeah, no, this
NASA
guy's
came up
way
with it
better
in
than
the
2-bit
1970s,
Da Vinci.
and it's now used.
2-bit Da Vinci is like constantly, licking the boot of capital, like in a way that I find really off-putting. But Matt Farrell is just really interested in the tech, and I think that's great.
Across industries. Since elastocaloric
Hey,
prototypes
Gilbertus
only
Maximus.
started appearing in the 2010s, and the first dedicated conference just happened last year, it makes sense that this field is still pretty early in development. So why even bother with elastocalorics? The reason is simple. No refrigerants means no hydrofluorocarbons, and that's a way bigger deal than you might realize.
The problem
Bingo.
is hydrofluorocarbons, as you know, has high global warming potential. So there's need to pursue refrigerants that are not has zero global warming potential.
Even though this technology is not yet mature,
Like even if it is equivalent with like energy consumption to current refrigeration technology, like getting rid of the coolant itself would be a massive win on the global scale.
Shape memory alloys like nitinol could play an important role in reducing the use of HFCs. Also, all big ideas, such as finding an alternative to the cooling systems that we've been using for nearly a century, require small steps to get started. It's still very early days, but this is definitely an area of study that we should be keeping our eyes on. If anything, the transformations are entertaining to watch in real time.
Look
But
at
what do you
that.
think?
That's so
Would
cool.
you be interested in an elastocaloric fridge or air conditioner? Jump into my
Hell
comments and
yeah.
let me know. And be sure to listen to my follow-up podcast, Still to be Determined, where we'll keep this conversation going. And thanks as always to my patrons for your continued support.
Matt Farrell's a good dude. I think he's a nice man. Also, good thing I didn't pop that open until I had this on a different screen. All right. Yeah, let's watch one more video from Matt Farrell here on the recommendation of Nindreen here, because I just think it's neat. I think this is also a really cool thing. This is from about 2 months ago, and it basically, battery technology is going nuts right now. Okay, like people are just throwing tons of money. Venture capital is coming in, just funding up research programs on all kinds of battery technologies that might lead to mass adoption and, thereby potentially help save the world. It's basically a feeding frenzy right now of investing into these renewable battery tech fields. And well, let's take a little bit of a look-see, huh?
So far, and our historical large-scale go-to pumped storage hydropower only works in certain locations.
With
What if
water.
we went in a different direction? Down. By making use of geography like salt caves, former mining sites, and depleted gas wells.
Oh, Crystal Hazer, hello. My cousin is married to a guy who owns a heating, cooling, HVAC business. And he complained to me recently that there are new laws being enacted in 2025 that force there to be a new coolant formula to be used. This new formula is highly flammable, which means that all tools for the work now must be spark-proof, plus all the machines need to be changed out and updated since the current coolant will not be legal to use. Yeah, that sounds like a huge pain in the butt, but really it is, it does boil down to, like, oh man, these coolants are basically super greenhouse gases and are leading to a lot more heating of the atmosphere, which is a big problem for those of us who live within that atmosphere.
Wells. Compressed air energy storage can be an effective understudy
Hey,
when
I'm just
wind
here to
and
watch a
solar
trash
aren't
fire.
available. What's better is that it has the potential to offer longer duration storage that other technologies can't for a lower capital investment and an out-of-sight, site. Now, if that weren't enough, Canadian company Hydrostore is making big strides in commercializing a variation of compressed air energy storage that eliminates one of its critical weaknesses. This method has been years in the making, with researchers trying to breathe life into it for decades. But Hydrostore is one of a handful of companies igniting interest in further innovation. Can compressed air change the energy storage game, or is it all just a little too niche? I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided.
Yeah, like, this is one of those videos where I'm like, that honestly sounds, again, this sounds too much like magic to me, where I'm like, that doesn't sound like it could possibly be. But you know what? It is technically feasible. Just kind of weird.
This video is brought to you by Factor, but more on that later. If you haven't noticed, we talk a lot about energy storage on this channel, and for good reason. It's like the corner pieces of our renewables jigsaw puzzle. We can't create a pretty picture without it. For example, our energy consumption tends to peak after sunset, which means that making the best use of solar requires squirreling it away for later. We can't fully rely on the whims of nature to power our lives 24/7, so we need a stable reserve to draw from as our plan B, or perhaps a plan CAES, or compressed air energy storage. We briefly discussed this mostly underground tech a few years back, but recent developments in its worldwide deployment have sent compressed air rising back to the top of the news cycle. Now, one of the more important updates on top of the spate of newly connected systems is the potential
Hydro pump storage is the starting point of this and is absolutely in use today. Yeah, who's saying it's not? That's like one of the main ways we store power.
debut of a grid-scale emissions-free compressed air energy system within the next few years. Yes, emissions-free. Now, to understand what that means, let's go spelunking into how compressed air energy storage works.
Which, by the way, would be really cool if we could have like a compressed air, like this compressed air facility that stores power without the use of heavy metal batteries. Like that would be a huge win. I wasn't saying it wasn't, just stating it. Okay, I was confused because he specifically mentioned hydro storage earlier in the video.
Now, we'll expand on the full process behind it later, but to compress the idea down for you, here's the main gist. The compressed air systems convert the
Whoever writes these puts so many puns in them, and sometimes they drive me nuts.
electrical energy produced by wind and sunshine into potential energy in the form of compressed air. You can think of CAES sites as being divided into two halves, above and below.
Gotcha, Harold.
The top side, there's machinery that runs the plant, where surplus energy powers an air compressor. And underground lies the storage, where the compressed air in question is pushed into and kept at a specific pressure. Now, this is usually, but not always, inside a pre-existing structure like a salt cavern. And it's worth noting, though.
Oh, so you can actually retrofit mines? Question mark to be this? That's a pretty cool idea.
That Hydrostore is opting to bring out the shovel for one of its upcoming projects by planning to dig a greenfield cavity. And whatever the site type, during discharge, the air flows through an expander turbine that drives a generator to produce electricity. Compressed air has actually been drifting about for quite some time, with the 1978 Kraftwerk Huntoff project in Germany widely cited as the first in operation. Part of what has kept compressed air from picking up steam all this time, though, is ironically
Picking up
heat.
steam.
Now, compressing air generates heat that you don't want sticking around, but you also need that heat to keep your turbines running properly during discharge. And the reason why heat is so essential to decompression in compressed air storage systems comes back to thermodynamics. Air rapidly cools down as it expands, and that temperature drop can form condensation or freeze turbines. Hotter air also improves efficiency. Think about the handheld cans of compressed air that you use to clean a computer, like this one.
Oh yeah, it gets cold as hell.
This is getting really cold. This can is getting crazy cold the longer I hold this, and I don't know if you can hear it, but the air is really slowing down now. Anyway, very cold can. Now, without a means of extracting the heat that you create from compression, it goes to waste. And that means falling back on fossil fuels to produce more heat down the line. I'm sure you can see right away how counterintuitive that is. However, Hydrostore's method enables its systems to have their compressed air and heat it too, without the strings that usually come attached. And better yet, Hydrostore is just one of many groups contributing to the growth of emissions-free compressed air energy storage. You could say compressed air is experiencing a bit of a windfall.
Boo.
And before we get into how compressed air is evolving, there's something else that I've been using that really has helped me to decompress. My schedule is so hectic, it's made it challenging to prepare nutritious meals for myself at lunchtime.
God, same. Have you tried not eating?
How is compressed air evolving, and why go for it in the first place?
And/or eating
Well, compressed
too
air
much?
energy storage provides discharge durations as long as 24 hours, and is one of the cheapest forms of long-duration energy storage that's out there. Unlike with lithium-ion, enlarging a compressed air energy storage facility brings down the per-unit price. For lithium-ion, it's an issue of scale. For most lithium-ion storage, it's designed for durations of 4 hours or less. While it's technically possible to extend lithium-ion's energy capacity, increasing the duration length directly translates into increasing system cost. In the words of S&P Global, that means it's unlikely to ever become economical or practical at durations above 12 hours or multi-day. It's also a thrifty investment thanks to its low capital expenditure or CapEx costs. Essentially, that comes out to significantly less money spent establishing and upgrading compressed air energy storage plants. So here's how those numbers shake out. According to Bloomberg's NEF's survey, based on projects delivered between 2018 and 2024, compressed air storage has one of the lowest CapEx costs of the long-duration energy storage technologies included in the data.
It's actually
about
really
$293
fascinating.
per kilowatt hour. For comparison, lithium-ion sits at around an average CapEx of $304 per kilowatt hour in 2023. But that's specifically for 4-hour duration systems. Now, interestingly, researchers at the US National Renewable Energy
wouldn't
Laboratory
be.
have observed that CapEx for utility-scale lithium-ion storage decreases with longer durations. But the opposite is true for system costs in terms of dollars per kilowatt. In the end, that comes out to lithium-ion being a progressively more expensive approach to long-duration energy storage relative to compressed air energy storage. Of course, cost is not the only consideration for energy storage. One of lithium-ion's greatest strengths is its excellent round-trip efficiency, or RTE. And the RTE is a ratio of what you put into a storage system versus what you get out. The higher the RTE percentage, the less energy you're losing over the course of charging and discharging. Lithium-ion batteries boast an average RTE of about 85%, with some systems at even higher efficiencies of 90% or more. And this beats out pumped hydro's average RTE range of 70 to 87%. Compressed air energy storage, on the other hand, is not yet in that league. In a 2021 review of the technology, an international team of researchers concluded that in the context of a specific type of compressed air energy storage, and we'll get into what kind later, its estimated range of round-trip efficiency is about 65 to 75%. But this figure has not been practically confirmed to date.
Well, okay.
A CAES's RTE tends to be even lower for older systems using a different method, which hovers at about 50 to 55%. Now, compressed air energy storage also has much longer lifespans than lithium-ion. And we already know that HydroStore's promise of at least 50 years of service isn't too unrealistic.
That's pretty cool.
Considering the Huntoff station is still kicking at 46.
Okay.
It also doesn't hurt that, like pumped hydro, compressed air is
Cyrus Oxlegion, thank you very much for subscribing on Twitch. I appreciate that.
a mature technology with basis in already existing industries. There's no innovation necessary for already standardized equipment like tanks and turbines. Knowledge and infrastructure from fossil fuel and mining operations can be repurposed, and there's opportunity to convert brownfield sites into viable facilities. Again, there's plenty of room for more pumped hydro, but compressed air energy storage has the convenient ability to take advantage of places like spent gas fields and greenfield aquifers.
Well, also, we're heading towards a water crisis, so facilities that use less water are going to be more viable in far more places. And I think that that's a very good thing. You know, with pumped hydro storage, like, you wind up sitting on a lot of water that you could be using for a lot of other things.
And even when you don't have the cave to work with, you can always opt for canisters as your means of storage. Now,
Akumi!
0 shimps left for Shimp Daddy.
Shimp Daddy. All right. And you know what? I'm open it up as well. Opening it up as well for our stretch goal of there we go, for GF onesies. So if we get 30 subs, my partner and I will both wear our adorable onesies on stream. There we go. But you guys have officially earned the Dream Daddy stream later today. So I'm going to be streaming more for you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Let's go! Greetings, everybody. Hope you're all well and staying safe and mentally healthy. Oh, man, am I not staying that last one. But, you know, do what you can. You're so good to us. I try. What about me? Especially you. All right. But we cannot just throw out half the renewable power either. Well, but we're not doing that though. I mean, right now we're throwing out basically all renewable power. Most cities don't have like that grid scale storage for power.
ultimately, compressed air energy storage projects are not invulnerable to failure due to siting restrictions. But compressed air has more geographical flexibility than pumped hydro. So you might be wondering, where did compressed air energy storage suddenly come from? Well, there's been a lot of stirrings in the space in the past year alone. Back in April, the 300 megawatt Ubei Ingcheng compressed air energy storage plant first connected to the grid as part of a national pilot project in Ubei, China. The following month, another 300 megawatt facility opened. This one developed by Jiangsu Guoning Technology and located in Feichang, China.
So
Over in the
cool.
Netherlands, Core Energy is partnering with Siemens, the very same German technology.
You could have called it Siemens Energy. You could have called it that. You just said Siemens because you knew it was dirty. You dirty dog, Matthew.
Conglomerate that you probably know for its wind turbines, as it gears up to establish two 320 megawatt plants, one in each company's respective home country. If any single company is on the CAES A list, it would be Hydrostor, because it explicitly promises a CAES, or Advanced Compressed Air Energy Storage, also known as AACAES, or Advanced Adiabatic CAES.
Couldn't seawater work for hydro storage? Yes, but you would then have to build like the facility to put the water at a higher elevation, which is a pretty big undertaking. Not impossible, but that's one of the main things. But you could do that, yes. Which would be which is a great solution for coastal cities.
It's fun with initials, but what exactly is so advanced here? Well, the key letter A word here isn't advanced, it's adiabatic. An adiabatic process is one that doesn't involve any transfer of heat.
True.
Remember when
True, all of the salt in the salt water is very corrosive, so you'd have to have like a pretty specialized facility to not corrode, which, you know, it will eventually.
I mentioned earlier that the heat is one of compressed air's major obstacles? Well, most compressed air systems up until this point have been diabatic, therefore they do transfer heat, and as a result, they also use fossil fuels. And that's because a compressed...
Should you create compressed air storage inside a volcano? Probably not. Again, the places he's been listing out are essentially old mining operations that have been abandoned. Those present like the best option, you know? Which honestly is great. There are tons of mines across the United States.
Compressed air system without some sort of storage for the heat produced by compression.
And honestly, KG Bogula, yeah, combining an air storage facility with like geothermal power would be amazing. But yeah, one of the things that I see with that is we just need to get better drilling technology for geothermal. Last I heard, there were some experimental drilling techniques using lasers that would, with time, make geothermal viable basically anywhere on the planet, which is so cool. But I don't think the tech is there yet.
We'll have to release that heat, now leaving a need for another source of always available energy to warm the turbines during discharge. As a result, you end up with carbon emissions. But by combining compressed air energy storage with thermal energy storage, which we've talked a lot about, it's possible to capture the heat generated during the compression and reuse it later during expansion. That way there's no need for an external fossil fuels-based energy source to create more heat. Plus, adiabatic compressed air has a much higher round-trip efficiency with a theoretical maximum of about 75%. And the concept of adiabatic compressed air has been tinkered with for quite some time, with experiments starting as far back as the early 2000s. In 2014, researchers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing completed one pilot plant that used water as its thermal storage medium in Wuhu, China. 2 years later, Swiss company Alacas, don't know if that's how they want to pronounce their name, tested another pilot plant in the Swiss Alps using a proprietary thermal energy storage medium, but with a little twist. Rather than a salt cavern, the team took advantage of an unused railway transportation tunnel.
Ooh.
As you might have guessed by its name, Hydrostor also has selected water as its thermal energy storage weapon of choice. It's less that Hydrostor is setting itself apart via new technology, and more that it's just happened to be the one company that won the race to debut a commercial adiabatic facility. Although it's definitely worth noting two things. One, companies fling around superlatives like world's largest and first about as fast and loose as your typical YouTube comment section. And two,
Hey, Lanzetta.
Hydrostor's Godrich, Ontario location is still very much a trial run. It's successfully been in operation since 2019, but its peak power output tops out at only 1.25 megawatts. In fact, during a recent interview, the company's president, John Norman, described Hydrostor like this. We are more of a systems integrator with IP, or intellectual property, on how we are integrating the system rather than a new technology provider. Hydrostor plans to prove its mettle on a larger scale through a series of upcoming projects, a 200 megawatt Australian facility in an old mine, and a 500 megawatt United States facility in a newly dug greenfield cavity. Earlier this year, Hydrostor announced its completion of another milestone in the permitting process for the Willow Rock Energy Storage Center in California. This follows the completion of the company's large generator interconnection agreement between the Southern California Edison utility and the California Independent System Operator last December. The goal is to have the Silver City Energy Storage Center in Australia operating by 2027 and Willow Rock ready to
That'll be
rock
so
in
exciting.
2030. Up until very recently, there were only 2 large-scale commercial compressed air plants in the world, Germany's Kraftwerk Huntoff and Power South McIntosh in the US state of Alabama, established in 1991. Both are diabatic. When you combine this history with the broad lack of...
It is kind of crazy that we've had this in operation in the United States for 33 years, and we haven't built more of them.
Incentive to invest in long-duration energy storage, it would seem that ACAES hasn't had the chance to show us its A-game. But as more and more interesting compressed air resurfaces, we might just find that it's what we needed to keep us afloat all along. And one last thing, I'm going to be at the Everything Electric Canada show in Vancouver between September 6th and the 8th. I'll be moderating panels on topics like everything you need to know about heat pumps, the impacts of wind, solar, and storage, induction cooking, as well as being on a panel about...
Sorry, I forgot about our fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. My bad. I apologize. I apologize to the shareholders of riverboat.gg. Oh, God. Anyway, this sounds really amazing. I'm real excited about the possibility that technologies, bring to the forefront. Get back to fracking videos right now. Oh, my bad. How do I buy riverboat.gg stock? Well, it's non-tradable and time limited, so you only technically own it for a month. And that stock is actually, it's not called a stock, it's called a subscription. And you don't own anything really, you just get a colored name in my chat. When are our quarterly meetings? March 32nd. They don't look like really large plants either. They're not. No, they're pretty space efficient. Most of their facility is underground. Why would anyone use peakers? What is a peaker? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Just read the comment above. Well, because nuclear still takes time to build. Like we don't have fast track nuclear power plant building capacity. Be really cool if we did, but most places don't. I'm in New Mexico. We got some wind turbines, but mostly lots of solar panels here. Hell yeah. I had a Jack NFT, but then my gift membership expired. Oh, I'm so
about
sorry.
an hour behind stream, but shouldn't a non-shimp be ashamed? Ain't shimp.
You shan't shit. I like that a lot. Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub, Micah. Getting us on the board. Eat my shan't. Yeah, I mean, I think storage is a necessary component of, like, basically any future thinking grid. But let's, I digress. Anyway, wanted to open stream with some cool tech stuff, and I think mission accomplished. Well done, everybody. Maybe we're not all fucked. Maybe things might be okay in our lifetimes.